Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Index podcast. My name is Matt Phelan. I am your host today, and I am here with the amazing Andrea Callender. This has been in my diary for a little while, and I've been really looking forward to it because I've only spoke to Andrea once, but we just talked about everything from the universe through to HR law. And I think I'm just really excited for our listeners and for me today. But before we get into it, Andrea, it'd be good for you to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Matt, what a lovely introduction. I'm just feeling energized hearing it. So, I'm Andrea Callender. I am a DEI professional. What's that? Diversity, equity, or equality, inclusion. Currently, I am the Inclusion and Diversity Director for McQueen, which is a global luxury fashion retailer.
Brilliant. And Andrea, most importantly, we need to know what makes you happy.
Matt, I've been thinking about this question because obviously this is the Happiness Index podcast. And as I was preparing, I thought, you better have something meaningful to say on being happy, just in case that question comes up. And 2 months ago, where are we now? We're in April. So 2 months ago in February, I had a moment really random
Yep.
where a thought popped into my mind. I'm happy.
Well,
Just really random. And of course, I did that very human thing, which is I said, oh my goodness, what happened today? I need to recreate this feeling.
yeah,
It just spontaneously came into my mind. And I was like, okay, so what am I doing now? What was I doing half an hour ago?
yeah,
What did I do today? When did I get up? Did I try something new? I tried to think about why did this thought just randomly pop into my mind? And I realized in that moment, because of course I was trying to capture it. Don't fly away. I want to
yeah.
feel what I want to
Like a butterfly.
feel this feeling.
You're trying to put it.
Yeah, and I didn't. The thing that was really interesting was I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel like I needed to jump up and down. It was just a quiet realization that I'm happy. And I think that for me, happiness is in those moments where I am being with people I love and care about,
Yeah,
where I am experiencing something wonderful. Today, it's sunny in London.
yeah, it is.
This is going to automatically be a great day.
Yeah,
And we're on top of that bonus, we're promised sun for tomorrow.
yeah,
So for me, all of my Christmases have come at once. Like I'm really grateful. And then the other thing I think that things that increase my happiness moments are things like being in my garden. I'm a passionate gardener, not
good.
planted on that. Got up this morning, went for a walk in my garden, touched everything. Going back to wage war on the slugs and the snails, cannot wait. But then when I think about happiness at work, it's those moments I think when I have a connection, when I make a connection, when I help someone solve a problem, see something differently, and you can tell because you used the word earlier, Matt, there's a vibe. You can just tell something in the energy shifts.
Yeah,
And we have one of those. Oprah calls it the aha moment. You have
yeah,
something just happened here. I'm not sure what it was,
yeah.
but that brings me beyond happiness. That's joy.
I love that. I love that. And I think that we should delve into a couple of things that you said there, Andrea, because one of the things, if we went back to ancient Greece, if they were talking about happiness, they would talk about eudaimonia and hedonism. And for the listeners, what they were really talking about is you've described both. Hedonism is that thing that's like we all seek and we think it's this thing we're going to be running around and yay and just having like parties 24/7. Whereas the ancient Greeks, when they referred to eudaimonia, they were describing what you described at that moment you had. And their detailed description of it is that's an underlying thing, and we do all the thing. Like it's almost like when you were talking, I was imagining a really beautiful butterfly, but then someone catching a net and putting it in a book. Like it's like what everyone naturally does because they want to capture that thing, but in the capturing the thing, you kill it because you start thinking you think about it. And I
Yeah.
thought the story was a really good way for us to capture the difference between eudaimonia, which is I think what you were feeling, and it isn't on the fact that just one thing because something happened in your day. It's the whole of your life underlying, based on your relationships, based on those energetic connections, and it never is one thing, but all the things that does drive it, from our research, are the really beautiful basic things that have existed for the whole of human existence. Like you've already said, relationships. You've talked about energetic connections. In a workplace, a couple that we would add to that is acknowledgement. I think everyone knows here when a moment in their life, and it links to D&I, doesn't it? When you haven't felt acknowledged, you haven't felt heard, you feel under appreciated, and there's a link into the inclusion as well, not feeling included and so on. So I thought I'd just use your story to capture some of the points that we see in our data and research, Andrea.
Yeah, I absolutely feel validated by you saying that because for me, it's just how I feel. I feel like happiness, something you said there, happiness is not in the big thing. Yeah. Happiness is in the small moments, the perfectly brewed cup of coffee,
Yeah,
waking up on a Saturday morning and realizing it's Saturday.
yeah,
Yeah. Finishing that task that's been in your inbox for a long time.
yeah,
Finally getting around to reading that article and realizing, wow, I learned something there. There are all of these moments that add up to happiness. And I love what you said about the butterfly because it's almost like as soon as you look for it or you try and capture it, like I was trying to, let me unpick, what did I do today? Then it just vanishes
yeah,
because it's not, you can, I think, be intentionally happy, but it's not necessarily going to come as a result of deliberately doing or deliberate actions.
yeah.
It's just one of those byproducts. And I don't know if your research has anything about that.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we really advocate that happiness at work and in life shouldn't be a target. And there's a great quote out there that all the best don't destroy a metric by making it a target.
Yeah,
And companies do this all the time because
absolutely.
you understand something. Let's take like Alexander McQueen, a really important part of your business would be creativity, but you can't make creativity a target. It's something that happens. And interestingly, that the happier you are, the more creative you are. So but what happens is then you're trying to link it into your budget and your plan and so on. And it's good meaning, well-meaning people, and they try and get everything organized. But in that, you can lose something. I share a story from my wife. My wife is a real worrier. She worries, and I'm a worrier. And I remember we were on holiday, and she just looked really happy, really calm. And then she didn't. So I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yeah, I'm a bit worried because I'm not worrying about anything."
Yeah.
Is it exactly how you said? She said, and I've had to learn with we'll call it your butterfly moment. I've had to learn myself because something I don't necessarily experience is calmness enough because I'm normally rushing here, rushing there. But I do experience calm every now and then, and I've had to learn, if it happens, to prioritize not doing anything else and sit with it because calmness will only last maybe 5 to 10 minutes for me, and there's nothing else that can't wait 5 to 10 minutes. So I've had to learn to sit with calmness. If when that comes to me, I have to just sit with it and not try and overanalyze it.
So I think the worrying thing is quite interesting. So you, me, and your wife we can have our own worry support group. I'm a black belt warrior. I could actually do master classes in it. And I'm convinced it's genetic
Yeah,
because my mom was a warrior and one of my grandmothers was a warrior. And what I realize is that worrying is actually me trying to control.
yeah,
Yeah, me trying to control the future, what's going to happen. Because in any situation, I'm the first person to identify all the risks. I can tell you all the things that could go wrong. Yeah, immediately. In any, my gift to the world, one of my gifts to the world is before you see the risk, I can tell you what the risks are. I can tell you why it won't work. I can tell you the things you haven't thought about. It's not on the level of like conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
but I believe risks are all around us.
Yeah.
And what I've come to realize is that, first of all, worrying isn't helpful because usually you're worrying about things that you can't control. Because if you can control it, why worry?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing about the control thing is it, I think what I tell myself is if I can worry in advance about all the things that could go wrong,
Yeah.
then if it happens, I'm prepared. I can hit the ground running.
Yeah.
If something goes really wrong, I've thought about it already, so I can hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things, the longer I live, both in work and in my wider life, I've learned it's about letting go of the illusion that you can control anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we can't.
Yeah.
And what's testing us now, everything that's happening in the world at the moment, which we're mirroring in our organizations, is that feeling. I describe it as we have this collective anxiety, it's low level humming in the background. You can't touch it, but it's there. We're all kind of vibrating
Yeah.
on one level with anxiety, concern, worry about something. I completely am there with your wife. If I'm not worried about something, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
It can't be this easy. Yeah. It can't be this easy. So we're all in this state now. And it's easy to say this is a legacy of the pandemic. I don't think we're over on a psychological level. Lots of us are not over the pandemic. We're still dealing with the after effects of that. And then you have all the uncertainty colliding with more and more uncertainty because nothing, all the old rules are just like disappearing. And then you've got the wars, and then you've got what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to my mortgage, what's going to happen. I mean, make your list. Is the food I'm eating poisoning me gently? Whatever.
Yeah.
So I just feel like there's a lot to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could write 10 pages in 5 minutes of things I worry about. 90% of those things are things that are never going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't have any control about. Usually when I'm projecting myself into some future situation. So that's the other thing. Live in the
Yeah.
moment, deal with what's now. Because also worrying, and remember, I'm a black belt judo warrior in worrying, can also paralyze me. Yeah, which is I'm so sunk in all of these random things could happen. Yeah, and I'm going around like armed, like I'm already in defensive mode, looking for evidence. And this is the bias piece, looking for evidence, looking for validation. Like I was absolutely right to worry. Why
Yeah.
are you worried? We should
Yeah.
all be worried.
Yeah. And Andrea, I'd love to build on this because I believe that manifested in the right way at work, black belt warriors have a superpower for work. And I believe, especially as an entrepreneur who is a warrior, but is also the type of guy that will just go and do something before he's even thought about it and it'd be a complete disaster. I think this does also lead into, for me, if we're talking about a super team, if you were looking to build together a super team of 5 or 6 people, I would highly recommend that you have a black belt warrior in there because although I'm worrying about the day to day, I'm worrying about certain stuff. I'm always worrying about my children, like all this kind of stuff. But from a work perspective, I'm definitely a risk taker. And I work with someone called Jackie, and she, I wouldn't even call it worry. She is the risk assessor of everything, and she has all my blind spots. So the things I'm not thinking about, she'll be like, she'll run me through the 20 of them, and maybe 15 will both agree, actually, no, we don't think that is a real risk. That is something. But there'll probably be 5 in there that I have definitely not thought about. We're like, yeah, no, that's a good thing. If we tweaked it like this, then that wouldn't happen. So I'm a big believer that all emotions evolved evolutionary for a reason, and worrying is in there. And I think you're right. We do have to make sure it doesn't move us into freeze. But I think that evolutionary skill that many people have that is seen as a negative is actually essential for a team at work. That's my belief from what I've seen. And then hopefully Jackie would say that we're the flip of each other. But I do believe you need that cognitive diversity if you're trying to build like a super team. What do you think?
I think it depends. So I think what you've described there is the ideal situation where you recognize that you have blind spots and you recognize the value that having a troubleshooter brings, a proactive troubleshooter brings. And then there's this other really important, there's a lot going on in that relationship that you've described, which is you trust Jackie and Jackie trusts you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been in situations, I think we've all been in meetings at work where the person who is bringing up, here all the things that could go wrong is treated like a pariah or Cassandra.
Clean that.
Yeah, yeah, we don't particularly. So I think the conditions, I do agree that worrying or risk assessment or troubleshooting absolutely can be a superpower, but it can be a superpower. It really depends on the environment. And I
Absolutely.
think any superpower really depends on things that we see as superpowers in one situation. So, absolutely, in a situation where you're the force, you're the entrepreneurial force, yeah, and your superpower is to keep going. You've got an idea and you run with it. That's what entrepreneurs do. They don't sit down and calibrate, is this going to work? Yeah, they see this is a need, this is an opportunity. This is something I woke up this morning, I saw it came to me in a dream last night, and I think this is the way forward. And what entrepreneurs do, one of my sisters is an entrepreneurs, and I watch her with awe, is that you just keep moving. I'm going to make this happen. Yeah. And it's a gift for you. So being an entrepreneur, having that attitude, that perspective that I'm going to do it,
Yeah.
catch me, let it fail. So what? Because we don't talk enough about the appetite to fail, which is built into you. And I just think it's genetic. I'm not convinced you can increase that. I hope you can, but I think true entrepreneurs, and it sounds like you are true entrepreneurs, they're also alchemists. They can make something out of nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is truly a gift. Now, the being a superpower in terms of worrying, I think that really depends. If you're worrying and you're worrying and you're worrying, and you're sharing it with people, and people are not like hearing you or not interpreting you, or if that is somehow being seen as destructive in a particular team where there isn't trust or people don't feel safe. We're all aware of the many mistakes, the really costly mistakes that have happened when people haven't listened to the voice of reason in the room, the voice that's saying, this emperor has no clothes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it can be worrying can be a superpower, but I think it can be the superpower in the right conditions,
Absolutely.
in a circle of trust. And I would also say that people who worry, as somebody who has accepted I'm a black belt warrior and secretly proud of it, wouldn't
Yeah.
call it a superpower, but I'm secretly proud of that. Also have to make sure that we don't stay in the sometimes worrying keeps us in a dark place
Yeah.
because this is not going to work. Nobody's listening to me. Why can't they hear me? It's not. I give you a practical DEI example.
Yes, please.
George Floyd happened. He was murdered. It was horrible. And that had a huge effect. That has been, I think, one of the most cataclysmic change movements. That's what happened. It's all that. And the response from many people, a number of responses, but a lot of warriors came out of hiding
Yeah.
and said, yeah, these are all the bad things that have happened, are happening, and you are all, everyone, you're all wrong and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah? And we started using words like you need to be woke, only a privilege, you're a white man of a certain age, automatically wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. We started having these categories of people who just might get up in the morning and breathing were wrong. Now that is worrying gone mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all that's happened, we could have predicted, what a lot of people now are talking about is this big conversation about DEI backlash and is Trump right and all of that. But the fact is, it's course correction as far as I'm concerned, which is we were going down one route where everybody was wrong. Some people were wrong just for existing.
Yeah.
And everything, and it was just a dark place. There was nothing good. Organizations were wrong. There were no good people. Horrific things were happening to so many people. How could we live with ourselves? Yeah. And you cannot live in that place forever. That is not a place from which you can move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a moment that we needed because so many people finally had a voice. So many people gave really powerful testimony about these are my experiences. And I think we all needed to hear that.
Yeah.
And now we're dealing with it. Now I know all of this darkness, all of these bad, evil things. I'm not really sure I can move on. Yeah, I'm not sure I can move on as a company or as an organization, as a team, because actually I'm feeling othered in a different way.
Yep.
Yeah. And when you put that in a situation like we're going through now, where there's just so much uncertainty, yeah, this is the fight back. What we're seeing now is, and we're talking about anti-woke or that is woke or let's not do this or who can use this lure or whatever. That's the fight back. That's the fight back from people who are saying, and I'm not judging whether to fight back. I think it's natural. There's always course correction. But that's where when you start worrying, the worrying becomes fear. You add it to our collective anxiety, and then you're in this hotness. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
can say to everyone, if you can worry and still keep moving,
yeah.
yeah, that's something we can learn from entrepreneurs. Be scared, take the risk.
Yeah.
Take the risk, understand, even if you don't fully understand the risk. It sounds like Jackie comes to you and says, Matt, that's really interesting that you want to do that thing and sounds really exciting. Just want to talk to you about a couple of things that could happen.
Yep.
Yeah. And the great thing is, and this is where she feels safe to tell you that, you don't feel threatened by her telling you that. You feel this is data, this is information. I
Exactly.
can do something with this. And that would be the ideal.
Yeah.
And what would be wonderful is to understand and to learn from how have you and Jackie got to that place
Yeah.
where you work in that way, in trust. Because if we could do that, if we could replicate that, if we could start trusting one another or the secrets, if you go into any company now, any organization, they're all talking about creating trust and psychological safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have had a lot of time because obviously in every company I've worked with, that's been top of our radar because trust is an essential component of a high performing team.
Yeah.
Being able to call the BS
Yeah.
only happens. Yeah. You need to have that trust. And then from that trust, you can make wonderful things happen.
Yeah. And I think,
And it's really interesting. There's so much literature, and I'm sure this is something that you are looking at in your work, which is one of the things that leads to more happiness moments, because I'm completely with you, which is happiness should not be the thing you go looking for.
yep.
Yeah. It's similar to when in one of my roles, I worked with fabulous engineers. Engineering is all about the process.
Yeah.
It's all about solutions and it's all about the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you trust the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say if we're looking for more happiness moments, we need to think about one of the things we need to think about is not getting to the happiness, moving in the direction of things that bring us happiness or make
That,
us feel happy.
yeah. And there's three or four, there's so much to pick up on that, Andrea.
Right.
I never thought we would go from worrying to George Floyd, and to hear you talk was so insightful. And I think there's a couple of things I want to pick up on here, which is your point about not making it the thing that we're chasing, and we call it not making it a target. For me, that goes back to your other job that you love, which is gardening, because our view is, even if you went out there now and you set all of the plants in your garden a target of how much they had to grow this year, and you went out there every day and told them that they're not hitting their targets and they need to grow faster, it would have zero impact. But this is what businesses do all the time, don't they, with targets?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just happiness, it's the sales target. It was the E&I targets in organization. Like this kind of like weird control thing that we think
Mm.
if we sit in meetings and talk about it all day, it will get better, when actually what we're trying to do, and this is what the happiness index is all about, understanding the fundamental underlying factors that lead to growth. And then our job is just to make sure they're in the environment. And the reason we use the gardening analogy is because the plants is all you can do. Make sure they've got the right level of sun. Have they got the right soil? Are you putting in the right whatever they need? And guess what? They still might not grow. But that doesn't mean you haven't done your job as a gardener, because your job as a gardener is just to prepare the environment and then see what happens and learn from that. And that's all you can do. And it's the same. And we say it's the same at work. That's your job. Even if you're the best chief people officer, CEO in the world, not going to make everyone happy. It's not going to be a perfect culture. But if every single day you go out and tend that garden, the growth will move in the right direction. But sitting in the meetings and haranguing people for not hitting targets that are ridiculous anyway isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So I wanted to link into your point there about gardening. And I think the other word that I just like to touch on, and I will stop talking about Jackie, and I will send her this before it goes live to make sure I've got her permission to share it, is that we definitely argue about stuff, but we're comfortable with that. But the bit that I think that has to come before trust is mutual respect. Because if that doesn't exist, and someone's coming to you and you don't respect them, you're already on and that has to be there. And one thing Jackie has shared with me, which I will get permission to before this goes live, and two things. Firstly, I know that Jackie's not always had that. Like, she's had people that have thought maybe she's like a negative person or a troublemaker for bringing situations forward. And I have to call myself out here and be honest that I've had to do my own development as an entrepreneur to get to the point where I'm happy to listen to people like Jackie, because how you describe your sister, that moving forward, when you're moving forward and people are like saying stuff from the sideline, you think they're slowing you down. Again, just on the work capacity, how important 360 reviews are for senior leaders, because I'm constantly hurt by stuff that I see in my 360 feedback, but I force myself to read it over again and sit with it. And I say to myself, this person has only written this down because they're trying to help me. And sometimes I look back at like stuff 2 years ago in 360 reviews that I know hurt me, but now I laugh about. I think that's just ridiculous. But I knew that when I first read it, I didn't know about it. So I would just, two things for anyone listening. I think you may be in an environment where the culture isn't right for you to be able to do that, and that happens regularly, so we need to acknowledge that. But secondly, I've had to do a lot of work on myself to be prepared to work with someone who's a warrior, because my natural instinct as an entrepreneur is, this person's slowing me down. I definitely, thanks to lots of people, my lesson to share for the podcast and the listeners is 360 feedback has to be done by the most senior people in the organization. Otherwise, it's just a tick box thing. And then the senior leaders have to sit with the feedback. Otherwise, it's just dismissed. Oh, that person doesn't understand what I do. I'm important, blah, blah, blah. I've seen that happen as well.
So what you're describing sounds like a process, which starts long before, because it's essential ingredient to everything you've just described is time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you spoke about, well, before the trust, you have to respect. There has to be respect between individuals. Everyone wants respect. I run so many focus groups and workshops about in different organizations about who do you want to be? How do we want to show up? What should our values be? Yeah, because DEI can only be authentic if it is linked to who you are. If you're doing DI just like to perform and to do some pretty stuff or celebrate, and there is a place for all of those things, but it starts really with what are you trying to achieve and who do you want to be as a company? Who
Yeah.
do you want to be as an organization? Who do you want to be as a team? What does your culture, what do you want your culture to be? What is your culture now? And culture is simply, there's all this sophisticated talk about culture frameworks or culture codes. But for me, culture is how we behave when nobody's watching.
Absolutely.
Plus, what gets stuff done here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And organizations are really collections of different cultures. How we work in finance, two finance teams might have completely different cultures. Yeah. But you've described an arc of things, of ingredients, so almost like you're cooking a big pot of soup. And before we get to the point where you are eating the soup and really enjoying it, maybe with a glass of wine or something nice sitting in the sunshine. So you've talked about trust. You've talked about respect has to come before trust. And then you talked about this idea of 360 feedback, which is really about building your own self awareness of your impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah, understanding how you impact on others, how other people see you. And actually, 360 can be very powerful. It can also go badly wrong.
Absolutely. I've seen.
Yeah, because 360 implies that, and this is the step that I've seen lots of different teams go wrong. So obviously, anything good has to start with the leaders. Leaders are the essential, and I believe everyone can be a leader and is a leader in some capacity, whatever you're doing. But in order for you to get the most out of a 360, you've got to prepare the ground with the people who are giving the 360.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've also got to prepare the ground with the leader, because exactly what you just mentioned can easily happen, which is they're disaffected. They've got some gripe. They don't like me. I don't know. Anyhow, I'm how I am. I get results. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, we can really validate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than, so I've also had at different points in my career, because I'm going to leave this, but I can be quite difficult to work with. My way or the highway.
Yeah.
And I get results. Yeah. And at different points, and I've had to learn that if you don't take people with you or bring people with you, really it's pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can't be all about me. And I've really had to learn that the hard way. Getting feedback about you're a lone wolf, you like to do things on your own. Your team would like to understand more about what you do. And then I say, it's magic. I don't even know what I do. Yeah. I just go into the zone, and when I have a conversation, things happen. Yeah. And I had to get coaching. Coaching is really important as well, to recognize that the problem was me and I needed to suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah.
Yeah. I needed to hear it. And as you say, I love that phrase, sit with it,
Yeah.
not run off, not run shrieking, I can't deal with that, or I'm above this. There's that other leadership space where I'm above all of this.
Yeah.
They don't know the pressure I'm under. I still have to deliver whatever I have to deliver. So there's a lot of preparation. I think 360s can be valuable, but there are other ways of building that self-awareness of how am I really being perceived? What's the impact? How am I really impacting on the people I work with?
Yeah.
Yeah. And 360 is one tool for doing that. There are probably other tools for doing that. But I think there's a lot of preparation that has to go into this. And the big enemy of all of this, I say this a lot here. We talk about luxury and the elevated experience. The real luxury for all of us is time and attention.
Yeah.
And what you didn't say is implicit in the relationship that you have with Jackie and your wider team is you give them your attention. So when when Jackie's telling you it's tough, I don't know how to tell you this, Matt, but guess what? That's not going to work. And here's why. Because I know as a professional warrior, I can tell you, and I can be really critical. And
Yeah.
I don't always tell you in a nice way.
Yeah.
If it's something I feel very strongly about and I want you to stop, Matt,
Yeah.
there in front of you is danger, danger. Can't you see
So
it?
you run away.
Yeah. And you're like, it's going to be fine. Remember that time 3 years ago when you said it wouldn't work and I did it and I pulled it out? Because entrepreneurs also have the gift of pulling it out.
Yeah.
Just pull it out. It's impossible, but we did it anyway.
Yeah.
And we learn from that sometimes, but also sometimes it just gives us the courage to do the next bold thing. So I think there's also something about what you give your attention to, what
Absolutely.
you notice. And I think that's also a part of getting more happiness moments, which is, are you paying attention? Are you noticing when happiness shows up in your life?
Yeah. And it's a nice feeling. It's a nice thing when you fix things that
Yeah.
could have, when you get the other side of it and it's gone and you have that kind of, oof, good job we did that thing. But I think I'm accidentally turning this podcast into a free coaching and mentoring session for myself. So I need to get back to my questions, but I also suspect you're someone that naturally mentors and coaches people even when they're not your mentees or coaches. So I think there's a bit of both of us on this. We've actually gone through all the questions without me asking them, but there's two that I do want to drill down into a bit because
Okay, go for it.
when we first met, Andrea, you talked about energy.
Yeah.
Normally when I meet people, for the listeners, just to get into it, we have the pre-call and I just ask them what they're interested in, blah, blah, blah. And quite often what they're talking about is very technical things that in their role that they're working on at the moment. But Andrea, I always write the words down that people use the most and then I come back to it. But the word energy, you kept we kept
Yeah.
talking. And in the happiness index model, we actually track energetic connections. We believe it is an important thing. You talked about it in a work respect. So I just want to ask you, Andrew, why are you conscious that you use the word energy? But the actual question is, why is energy important to you? And I don't know. And then if you can bring it into the workplace, you get a bonus point for that. But I'm just generally interested in energy in you.
So I guess it's coming back to the garden thing, isn't it? What makes plants grow? Energy. So am I conscious that I use energy a lot, the word energy a lot? I've become conscious in the last couple of years. That's one of my superpowers. I bring energy into every interaction that I have.
You do.
Yeah.
I've had 2 interactions with you, and I was buzzing after the last one, and now I'm going to be buzzing this afternoon. I hope the listeners are getting.
So much. Thank you. I really believe that every interaction, every encounter, every conversation is about an energy transfer. So this morning, you've given me some of your energy. Yeah, we've both been vulnerable together. We both confess that we haven't always been the leaders that we wanted to be. Yeah. And in doing that and in talking about happiness, which in itself is such an energizing theme,
Yeah,
we are transferring energy.
yeah,
Yeah. And so I have become more aware because the feedback I get from people is I feel really energized.
yeah.
Yeah. Some people say, I think I've just had a therapy session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. That was the first podcast. I just had that.
I do believe I'd work. And I think one of the reasons why people work, we work to get needs met. And there's the basic needs like got to survive, got to eat, got to pay my bills. But I think what's becoming more and more visible for me is that we work to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Yeah. We were at McQueen here, we talk a lot about one of our values is to be a community.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the inclusion part of that is we want to be a community where everyone can be their best self.
yeah,
Yeah. That is part of our aspiration. And that is, I would say, a core value.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this, wherever I have been fortunate to work with some amazing organizations that are all in their own way forces for good. They're a regulator that's trying to protect patients, a broadcaster that believes in public service. We come to work, we do our work. One of the reasons why we do it and why we would do it, some people would do their work even if they weren't paid for it,
Yeah.
is because it gives you this sense of being connected to something bigger. It gives you a route to more happiness moments. We might not even be aware of that. So, in the course of this call, we've exchanged energy, and I hope we have shared some of our energy with your listeners, because I suspect this energy transfer that happens every time you do one of these podcasts is why people listening.
Yeah. Interesting. Hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. It's the energy, everything you do, everything we do in at work is giving some of our energy.
Yeah, interesting. If you're listening now and you feel that or have an opinion on that, please message me or Andrea, because people message me from the most bizarre places. They say, "Oh, I've just been on a bike here," or I was in a lift and I was listening to you, Andrea, say that point." So if you've heard this point, please message me on LinkedIn and I'll share it with Andrea, or vice versa. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on this energy point.
And just on that point, everybody talks so much. There's all the research that says exercise, moving healthily makes you feel better.
Yeah,
Why does it make you feel better? You're expanding your energy.
yeah,
You
absolutely.
go for your bike ride. You spoke about a bike ride just you mentioned. I've gone for my bike. I'm all sweaty now and hot and everything. At the end of your bike ride, you're usually knackered, tired, and
Yeah,
energized.
yeah. Totally. I had to learn that about the office world, that when I finished work, I felt tired. So my natural thing was to want to sit down or eat some junk food, or when I drank, have a glass of wine. And I had to learn that if I went for a run, I became more energized. But my whole body, I always used to think of lorry drivers, because I think, you imagine you're a lorry driver, and I don't know how many hours you're allowed to drive, but let's say you drove for 8 hours with breaks in between. When you get home from that, you haven't used your body, but you would be exhausted, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And your body probably doesn't want you, because I know a few lorry drivers from my brother's business, and that they really struggle with getting active because they're sitting down a lot.
Yeah.
And the natural thing is you want to sit down and probably eat some junk food when you get in, don't you? And I think some of the things that give us energy, we often think the reverse of, don't we? Think it's going to take energy from us, but actually something like movement does give you energy.
And also allowing for moments when your energy is not high.
Yeah.
So one of the things is you can't be 199 full throttle energy all of the time.
Yeah,
Yeah. And again, coming back, lessons I've learned from my garden, there are some moments when you should rest.
absolutely.
You cannot have the next sustainable energy if you haven't been fallow. Your garden cannot be on all the time. At work, you cannot be on all the time. So if
Yeah.
you're going home after work feeling really tired, in a kind of, I need to now sit down and veg, scroll Instagram, fill my face with chocolate or whatever, soothe myself. Because what you're doing is you're soothing yourself.
Definitely that.
Something about being aware of how do I want to soothe myself, but also how do I want to manage my energy? And am I being intentional about how I use my energy throughout the day?
If you're intentional of how you use your energy, message us, please. And if you're not, and you're going to plan to, please message us. There's one point I want to pick out there about the virtual world that I've noticed, Andrea. I don't know if you've noticed it, that if we did this over a coffee in person, sounds like we're both in the London area, I like, I'm energized by the conversation. I go away energized. I found, especially with like keynote talking, if I'm with an audience, I'll go away from that event energized, generally speaking. However, when I do replicate the same thing on a screen, I actually go away completely depleted, and I almost have to go fallow straight away. So even if like, I will definitely after this, I'll be energized by the conversation, but I will have to make time to go and have a cup of tea and sit out on the wall outside or something, because I found the virtual expenditure of and swap different. And actually, I think you're quite rare that your energy still goes over somehow. It goes through the screen and it is energizing me. And I don't. But I think people that are on consistent meetings must have that same experience. But any
There's a difference. There's no replicate. There's no substitute for being with people in person. But you can be overwhelmed both by interacting with someone in person, interacting with them over the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the thing is this point about being aware of your energy and how it flows.
Yeah.
Because you've energized me today in a really good day. I'm going to be floating on air and I'm going to go to my next meeting and probably say, hi, I just did this thing. I met this gorgeous guy called Matt. He's so interesting. We're talking about happiness. And I know that's going to provoke other conversations.
Yeah.
But I also will allow myself some downtime. Yeah. So I won't go straight from this and be transmitting. I'm very aware of my energy surge. And actually, it's great that you experience it positively. But actually, after some people have met with me either face to face or online, they have to go and lie down. They have to and I say this, get out of my energy field now. Yeah, and give yourself some space. So I think it's just being aware of you've spoken, you've probably transferred, you've exchanged energy when you're speaking in person. Yeah. And you feel, wow, I'm really lit up because there are all sorts of energies that you're experiencing when you see someone in person.
Yeah.
But you can also make that same, it won't be exactly the same, but you can also, I feel your energy, even though we're working through a screen. I feel the power of your concentration. I feel you're concentrating really hard. And I also feel you processing information. Yeah. And I'm feeling all of that, even if you don't think I'm feeling that. And I'm also feeling an immense sense of goodwill that you're sending me, that you're giving me. That I think this is a goodwill conversation.
Why do you just downloading all this stuff to all of us, and we're all learning? And that, I can't believe we've actually only got 4 minutes left, Andrea, which is
sorry. Okay, sorry. What's your second and final question, Matt?
most of there's a range of people listening to the podcast. People start but I want to talk about, it's a classic event question at the moment, because you said it yourself, like there's so much chaos. What is the future going to be? Blah blah blah. I'd love just your personal thoughts on what you see the future for HR. Where does it?
Crystal ball. I gave away the crystal ball at the last charity. I think I took it to a charity shop. I think one thing I'm certain of is that there will always be a role for HR. Yeah, at the moment, there's a huge conversation going on about AI. And I get a sense of deja vu because for years, talking about AI, we're talking about automating everything, automating all of these processes. And the dream has always been, for as long as I've worked in HR, human resources, as long as I've worked on like a people agenda, the dream has always been that we are going to outsource. It used to be outsourcing was going to save us. Then it was going to be we'd work smarter. Yeah. And it's all cyclical. Right? We're going to devolve ownership. Then we're going to take back its center or whatever. And the dream has always been we're going to get to this state where HR professionals will be able to concentrate on the strategic things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon, even with AI, because my experience of AI, which I'm a huge fan of, Chat GPT and Microsoft Copilot, this is not a plug for them, but really saving me loads of time. But I think some things that I see are happening are, I think HR still will need to be the conscience of an organization. And by that, I mean, I think we have to carry everyone with us in this bold new world of work, which none of us is sure what it looks like. Yeah. We thought that working from home was here to stay. And now, less than 4 years later, we find out people secretly thought that was an emergency response to an emergency situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of reinforces my view that ultimately we are human beings. We don't really like change.
Yeah.
So we roll back when we can. But I think HR has a really important role to play in one, creating the sense of community.
Yep.
Yeah. Two, making sure that whatever work looks like, it is accessible to everyone. The benefits of working, the benefits of finding purpose partly through your work.
Yeah.
I think that's something everyone is entitled to. And I think that's why we do HR. We do the policies and we do the systems and we do the processes. But the end game is that people's work lives or lives at work can be as smooth and as meaningful, and as they get to do the meaningful stuff because they know they're getting paid. They know how they're being recruited. They know that we want to develop them, whatever, all of those great things that HR kind of leads on. And
Yeah.
that's really important. When companies, and I was talking about well-being and safety and trust, all the things that we've talked about in this conversation, HR has a really important role to play. One, in keeping that as things become even perhaps more uncertain, and as people start thinking, well, I'm going to just focus on selling, or I'm just going to focus on my day job or whatever. HR has a really important role in helping us to reach first of all, to be ourselves at work, to enjoy whatever work we're doing, and for us to have that meaningful experience that delivers whatever it is, that creates whatever it is we're trying to create for our companies.
Wow.
That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm privileged. I really am privileged to have worked whichever HR team, whichever chief people officer. That is why HR people do HR. Yeah. They want to make work better.
Yeah. I don't think there's any better way to leave it than that, Andrea. I think I believe it on the three C's, which is like the consciousness, making the organization conscious. People talking about making AI conscious of what it's doing. Let's make companies conscious of what it's doing.
Yeah.
That's how I would sum up what you said. And the best way to deliver that is through community. And then the third C is calendar. So I'm going conscious community calendar for everyone to remember. And then message both of us on the energy point, because that was the point that was throughout. Tell us whether you're conscious of it, your own energy, and whether you think about it. And I will just finish by saying, I am energized, and I'm going to go and have a cup of tea and think about everything we've just discussed.
So have a cup of tea. Don't go into your next high energy interaction. Have a cup of tea. Think about it. And I wish everyone just more and more energy, happiness, purpose, fulfillment. So Merry Christmas. That's how I'm going to end.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is just so funny because we're literally going to summer and it's hot here. But I'm gonna say happy Halloween to you, Andrea.
There you go.
Thank you, and thank you on behalf of me and everyone that's listened, that's just had a free therapy session. We really appreciate it. And yeah, chat soon.
Ciao for now. Thank you.